Good evening and welcome to the Ankeny Community School District Facebook Live Forum to provide information and answers for your questions about the proposed 11th elementary school and upcoming bond referendum on February 6th. After a brief presentation, we will take your questions submitted in the comments. We begin with a presentation from Ankeny School Superintendent, Dr. Bruce Kinston.
Good evening. The Ankeny Board of Education has called an election on whether to bond for funds to build a new elementary school. If approved, the bond would provide $18 million to design and build an elementary. Use of the bond is limited to these specific purposes. The bond requires a 60% supermajority yes vote in order to pass, and if passed, construction of the school will begin in the fall of 2018 and be completed by August 2020. So when you go to the ballot box, you'll see this language as approved by Bond Council that states that shall the Board of Directors of the Ankeny Community School District in the County of Polk and State of Iowa be authorized to contract indebtedness and issue general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $18 million to provide funds to build and furnish a new elementary 11 school building and improve the site thereof. You can see the construction timelines, and I think it's important for the audience tonight to see that this is more than about elementary 11. These projects are based on the assumptions based on our current enrollment predictions from our district demographer. And you can see that by passing this bond, it sets a series of construction projects in motion. In 2020 to 2021, we will be opening 11 pending the February 6th bond referendum. In 2022, we are looking to add on to both our high schools, and that would bring those to 1,868 students. It's not long after that in 2023 and 2024, we would be opening elementary 12. And that's if no elementary additions, and the additions only delay it a year. And so we do need an elementary 12 and have purchased land for that, as well as in 26 and 27, we're starting to see our growth hit our middle grades. And so we're proposing a middle school building. And then middle school of 8-9, it says 2030, but I'm guessing it would probably be closer to 28, 29. And then 29 and 20 to 2030, we would be opening elementary number 13. And it's at that point that we would be looking to see whether a third high school would be built. If the projections stay in line, we will be beginning that discussion in the mid-2020s. So why elementary 11? We currently have 2 feeder systems that feed into, and so our elementaries in the north are Ashland Ridge Elementary, Northeast, Northwest, Rock Creek, and Westwood. Crocker Elementary, East Elementary, Prairie Trail, and Southeast are our South Elementaries, and they both feed into 2 6-7s and then 2 8-9s and 2 high schools. It's important to note at the bottom of the slide in 2020 that we passed the capacity and that we're needing to build and add another elementary. This slide simply shows the projected building capacities provided by our demographers. And you can see that our elementaries are all built for different sizes. We're currently building new buildings at 750, and we have 3 other buildings that we would be able to add on, but it's not at this point that they would provide us enough space. So you can see that the red spot or spaces indicate that we're over capacity. And this is during the 2017-2018 year to 22 to 23. Our growth remains one of the fastest growing school districts in the state of Iowa. This year's enrollment increased by approximately 355 students, making our certified enrollment 11,548 students for the 17-18 school year as reported to the state. Since Ankeny is one of the fastest growing cities in Iowa, it's no surprise the school district is growing as well. Our enrollment projections indicate continued growth of more than 1,500 students by the 21-22 school year. The growth continues to drive the Ankeny Board of Education's plan for the future. A minimum of 4 elementary buildings will be at capacity in 2020. And a new elementary will keep class sizes reasonable while continuing Ankeny's tradition of academic excellence. By pursuing a school bond referendum and opening an elementary in 2020-2021, capacity will keep up with enrollment. In addition, construction of additions to both high schools will begin, as we discussed earlier, in the summer of 2020 to be completed in the fall of 2021. And that will help both buildings being able to house more than 1,800 students. This expansion plan has allowed us to make sound fiscal decisions by not only considering the cost of building a new facility, but also considering the cost of staffing a facility. The board's priority is to continue a level of programming as well as seeking new and innovative ways to give Ankeny graduates an advantage to prepare for their role in the 21st century. This slide shows the district enrollment, and typically we go by the rule that we grow 2,000 students every 5 years. Ankeny currently is the 6th largest school district in the state of Iowa. So how do we prepare? And we look at the work of our demographer, as well as stay in contact with the city and their projections. And you can see that in 2016-17, the elementary additions, we added on to make Rock Creek and Prairie Trail 750. We're building for growth, and we're focusing on a long-range facility plan. One of the things I think that would surprise the citizens of Ankeny is that in 23-24, all class sizes will be over 1,000. This provides not only additional elementary needs, but secondary needs as well. So let's talk about Elementary 11. Elementary 11 will have 5 sections to serve kindergarten through 5th grade. As we said earlier, it would have the capacity of 750 students. This building will be located in the Prairie Trail development to the west of North Ankeny Boulevard. We purposely are using the same design concept as Prairie Trail and Rock Creek, in effect to be more effective with taxpayer dollars. The estimated cost is $18.9 million, with $900,000 for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And that 9.9 or almost $1 million will be funded by the district. People may wonder how long this bond will last, and the bond will go to 20 years. Why this location? Well, enrollment is increasing significantly, particularly in the Prairie Trail development, with one more housing construction planned for that area. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing student attendance areas in our district. With Terrace being repurposed to serve as a centralized preschool building, there will be greater need for elementary facilities in the South Feeder. As you can see from our tax rate history, we've worked hard to reduce taxes, topping out at $22.35 in the year 2010 and 2011. We've gradually but purposefully brought them down $18.52 for this fiscal year. People may be asking why use a Geo Bond if you're able to reduce taxes. Well, why we need to use a Geo Bond? Because it strategically places out construction and our financial commitments. As far as sales tax, all available sales tax funds that we receive are committed to current or future projects. And we're not able to use Pebble because the purpose or primary source for Pebble is for the maintenance of our existing 16 buildings. We have a 10-year facility plan that brings all of our buildings up to standard. And that plan has been in effect for a couple years now and will continue as a committee put a lot of work into determining what each building needed to be a 21st century educational facility. So let's talk about some myths and facts. And, you know, a lot of times people, especially when you're going out to build another elementary, they believe that it doesn't affect their neighborhood or it doesn't affect their grades. And so one of the things you may hear is we live in the North Feeder, so this doesn't impact us. Well, the fact is, without this elementary, all elementary buildings will experience overcrowding, boundary changes, and higher class size. We'll need to take students as they overfill the buildings due to a failure of a bond issue, and we'll need to put them in classes. It may be in their feeder, or it may be even in another feeder system. And as we continue to put students at a rate of our average of approximately 400 students, class sizes will go up. By voting against the bond, we can delay the boundary line changes. Well, the fact is that boundary lines, no matter what, will change in 2021. In fact, if the bond doesn't pass, we may need to use those boundary lines to adjust and be able to fit students into our elementaries. If you have students that are already through elementary and are in our secondary system, you may be asking, why does this impact you? Well, the growth will impact the secondary buildings, as you saw earlier, that both high schools will be added on to the very next year of 2021. As well as multiple other elementaries in our future up to 2030. and that will not be the last elementaries built in Ankeny. So it does also include a 6-7 and an 8-9. So this bond issue, as I mentioned earlier, sets into place and allows us to get ready to begin not only to build elementary schools, but add on to high schools, construct a 6-7, construct an 8-9, as well as begin to plan for a third high school and begin to talk about what type of high school will Ankeny want in the year 2030 or approximately in that timeline. Will they want to build a third comprehensive high school, or will they want to possibly have a magnet school? But none of that will happen unless the elementaries are passed and we begin where our growth currently is.
Thank you, Dr. Kimston. We will now be accepting questions that we've received via Facebook, and we will continue to accept questions for a little while here. So please continue to submit your questions and we will get to those. One question we've received, Dr. Kimston, is they're asking if we can revisit why this school is proposed for the South feeder system.
One of the reasons that this Elementary 11 is proposed for the South feeder is that Prairie Trail, even though that we've added and made it a 750 student elementary, the elementary, that area continues to grow exponentially. And with future buildings and home construction sites already plotted, we know that that area is bound to have a lot of students in a very short amount of time.
Great. Another question that was submitted was, will my taxes increase if this bond is passed?
Your taxes will not increase. And I think that's a great question, Samantha, that taxes will not increase. In fact, in working with our Chief Financial Officer, Jackie Black, we predict that our taxes will be lowered somewhere between 40 and 50 cents, and could be even a little bit more. The point that I would make, however, is that if the bond doesn't pass, we may be forced to use some of that money for the extra expense, whether it be transportation or additional teachers, and trying to find those extra classrooms that are a scarce commodity in our buildings.
Another question we received is revisiting some of the funding points we reviewed. They're asking about why not use the sales tax funds, why we've chosen to go the route of using a general obligation bond.
Our sales tax bond, as we discussed earlier, is already committed. And so for our future, we don't have that money. If we did, quite frankly, we probably wouldn't be going out for a Geo Bond and asking the citizens to pass this. So I would say that it's important for people to know that, for example, the remodel of Northview, which was a tremendous project, funds of that nature and lots of other construction that we're doing, that's been committed. And so we're required to go out for a Geo Bond.
Another question we've received is how much will the new elementary cost to build? And they go on to say, I see the bond is for $18 million, but that seems like a lot of money. So maybe talking about what that $18 million will go to, and then the total cost of the building.
Well, the 18 and in totality, the entire project cost $18.9 million. One of the things that we've decided is that we're going to use $900,000 for FF&E, or fixtures, furniture, and equipment. And one of the things that I would say is that 18 million, when you consider the amount of just under 100,000 square feet, and you look at 5 sections of classrooms and a gymnasium and all of the technology that will fill this building, it is a lot of money. But I would say that we've decided that we really need to make the most out of our elementaries, and have landed on a 750 student building.
Another question we've received is, if the bond is passed, when will the new school open?
Well, I know that the school will open in 2020. As far as the date, we don't have the calendar quite set that far out. I do know that it'll start after the Iowa State Fair as set by the Iowa Code.
This next question I'll go ahead and take for you, Dr. Kinston. We received a question if this slide presentation will be posted online. And yes, we'll be downloading this video. It'll be available on our Facebook page going forward, and we'll also make it available on our website. The next question we have is maybe talking through some of the things that could happen if this bond doesn't pass, some of the ramifications that we would see.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's several things will happen. The immediate thing that I'm concerned about as superintendent is dealing with classes size that will go up, and the extra staff that will be required for even additional classes. The other thing is that the cost of extra transportation that wouldn't be required, and we will be required to have buses at a cost of anywhere from $33,000 to $34,000 a bus. We would be required to spend money where we wouldn't have to be buying extra buses or as many to move students across the districts. And so what an Ankeny resident would see is yellow school buses crisscrossing the district and trying to find the next drop off for where they could have certain students attend, and then probably go to another stop and drop them off possibly at another building. So I think a lot of additional cost would be incurred if the bond issue doesn't pass. The second biggest thing, as was outlined in the presentation that you'll be posting, is all of the construction projects. If you think about 3 elementaries and adding on to 2 high schools, and if you think about building another 6-7, building another 8-9, it is something that no other district in Iowa, quite frankly, is getting to do. And I always tell people, this isn't a problem, it's just a challenge. I would rather have this challenge, Samantha, than many of the districts across Iowa that are having to close or consolidate because they don't have additional students.
Another question we've received, and I'll go ahead and answer this one as well, is when is the election and where do I vote? How do I vote? The election will be February 6, 2018. The absentee ballot request forms are currently available, so you can get those at the Polk County Auditor's office. You can also get them online at the Polk County Auditor's website. We also have some absentee ballot request forms available for you at each of our buildings. So when you're dropping your student off for school, you can run into the office and grab one there as well. If you are planning to go out to the polls on February 6th, you can find your polling location on the Iowa Secretary of State's website. Please note that the polling locations for school and city elections are sometimes different than where you would go to vote for state and federal elections. So make sure to check out your polling location for city and school elections.
I think it's important, Samantha, that people know that as a district, we can only present our case as far as what we believe as a district we need for facilities. We can't say vote yes. And so that's what we're doing tonight is presenting our case and then allowing the taxpayers on February 6th to go. And I know that you like to go and actually vote, where I like to get an absentee ballot and not have to stand in line. So we don't care how they do it. It's simply that they get out and exercise their rights and vote.
Another question we received is why we need an 11th elementary now. What's the significance of the timing in asking for an 11th elementary?
Well, I spent 14 years in Waukee prior to being in Ankeny, and the one thing that I learned fast and in my now 22 years in the fastest two growing districts is that you never want to fall behind. And if you fall behind, not only do you incur a lot of extra costs, it's hard to catch up. And so one of the things that our boards have done well in Ankeny is that they're always looking ahead. They're always looking for land. And they're wanting to make sure that we stay ahead of the curve as we're able, unlike 20, 30, 40 years ago, where there weren't demographers and they weren't able to project not only how many students at a very high accuracy, but able to use geosystems and be able to identify where the pockets of growth will be occurring and for how long.
Okay, one question that we received, and I'm going to reword it a little bit so to make it relevant to the 11th elementary, but how would building an 11th elementary impact open enrollment, and would we continue to accept open enrollment applications?
And that's one thing that we would need to take to the Board of Education, and it's a yearly decision as far as whether open enrollment would stay open. And the Iowa Code gives us guidance as to when we can be open and when and under what circumstances we can close enrollment. Basically is if a building is full or if a program is full. And so those are the two major reasons that school districts are able to close enrollment.
Another question we've received is someone wanting to understand how we can ask for a general obligation bond and have it not impact the property tax rate.
Well, one of the things that I would say is that we continue to have a lot of new people move to Ankeny. I heard at the Chamber of Commerce yesterday that approximately 5 people a day move into Ankeny, and we're one of the fastest growing communities, not only in Iowa, but in the country. And so with as many houses that are going up, as well as people seeking Ankeny schools, able to use the money that we have strategically. We work with financial advisors to structure our debt, and our value increase this year alone was 12.7. So I think that gives an answer to, well, how can you be building and not raise? And what we're saying is not only we can build, but we're going to lower your overall tax.
Very good. So another question we've received is, if this bond is voted down, will this delay the need to change boundaries, or how will the bond not passing impact boundary lines?
It's interesting because it actually will accelerate the boundary changes, because we know that if it doesn't pass, we need to find space for our students, and in this case, elementary. And it's kind of a domino effect, because then all of a sudden our high schools are full. And then it continues on into the middle schools. So I don't want to project the worst case scenario, but I would let you and those on Facebook tonight know that not being able to open an elementary essentially accelerates the process, and one in which we have less control, and we're seeking spots to put certain grade levels of students.
Another question we received, and I'm going to flip back to this slide, is to go through some of the details about the proposed elementary 11 building and what that offers the district.
So if you look on the slide, this is actually an FRK drawing, the architects with whom we're working. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a 5-section building. It's built right now, we're estimating the cost at $18.9 million. Another thing that I would point out is that one of the things that we'll do soon thereafter is to go out and start to take our drawings and take bids. If it doesn't pass and we have to run the bond issue, and I believe it's 180 days that we would have to wait to run another bond issue, my concern is, what will the cost be if we delay? How much more? Because it won't be less, but how much more will we be paying to build the same building? This building will have space for all of our classrooms. It will obviously have the latest of technology, that because we know that our students beginning in 4th grade each have their own Chromebook, and our technology committee is now starting to examine what does technology look like at kindergarten. And so by the time this building opens, you may see technology in place in our lower grades as the committee becomes more familiar with what is developmentally appropriate.
Another question we've received is about the plans for Terrace Elementary and the decision to make that location a centralized preschool, and if you can maybe share some background information on that.
Terrace Elementary is a great school, and I've gotten to know Terrace through several projects, and they have a very strong school community. They the one unique thing that makes Terrace different from the other elementaries is that it's not regreening or repopulating itself. And so basically where we have construction that is not built out in other parts of our community, the Terrace neighborhood is built out. The second thing is that Terrace homes are not turning over. They're at a price point where people are buying and they're staying. Now that doesn't mean that new people are not moving into Terrace, because they are. They're moving everywhere, but they're not moving into it at a rate. And so one of the things that the boards, and this has been a discussion long before I was even in Ankeny, is as they started to look at Terrace, they started to wonder, will Terrace repopulate? Will it regreen? And then the next question was, if it doesn't, what are we going to do with it? Mm-hmm. And I heard those things even before being Ankeny employee. And so one of the things that I would tell you is that we started to try to figure out what would be the best purpose, or how would it best serve the Ankeny Community School District. And with the number of students that we have in our early childhood special education, it just seemed like a natural fit with the size of building that really cannot be added on to, except to the east. And so we determined that our early childhood special ed, which the model is called reverse integration, where we have students who are entitled to special services, as well as they have students that are general education students. Those students all go to school for half days for 4 days a week. And so we believe that Terrace will make an outstanding place to continue to educate children. There'll be Ankeny children. It's just we'll be pulling our early childhood special education children out of other buildings and bringing all those services into one, which we believe not only will create synergy, but it will also be able to allow teachers to plan together, and professional learning communities is one of the standards of our work here. And we'll be glad to see that the Terrace early childhood will become a special place. One of the things, and the other thing that I would say that Terrace would be, as well as a 4-year preschool programs, which we know that Ankeny has a lot of little kids, and that's one of the changes we're seeing in the pictures we're getting from the data, is that a lot of oldest children are coming, versus when I first got here, it was people were moving in with children that were already in school, if not middle school. Well, now we're having a lot of new families move in, and they're coming in with several children. But these soon-to-be Ankeny students we haven't seen any of them yet.
Mm-hmm. Another question, and it's kind of revisiting some of our earlier discussions, but why should a high school parent care about a bond referendum for an elementary school?
Well, one of the things is that not only are we growing on all sides of Ankeny, we're also growing at all ages. And so we're starting to see some of the growth, some of those 800 student classes, and now 900 student classes, and soon to be 1,000 student classes start to reach in the middle school and the high school. And so we need both. We don't need just an elementary, we need additions to the high school. But I have a greater need right now at the elementary. It's not that we're ignoring the high schools, and we definitely won't. It's just we need this bond issue to pass so that we will be able to go out and use that money. We do not plan to go out with a Geo Bond for that high school additions. So that's one thing that the citizens don't have to be concerned about. But the timing and the number of contractors and the number of projects going at once, we really need to get the elementary built and be going on the high schools, because soon thereafter, that next elementary, which if the projections were to hold true, will be in the north. And so this one is in the south, and the next one will be in the north. We have the land bought. We believe that it will be the same style with a few modifications, I'm sure, and especially with technology and looking out 7 years, I'm anxious to see what technology will be used at that point.
Absolutely. And earlier in the presentation, you also talked about strategically placing out those construction timelines, but also strategically utilizing the different funding streams. So I know that plays into it as well. This is an interesting question. I know you'll be able to talk about some board policy we have. We have a question about what will the approximate class sizes be at the new elementary?
So class sizes, we do have a board policy, and I would say this is different than any other district that I've been in. Starting out in a small school and then being at Dowling and West Des Moines and Waukee. Ankeny has a set in stone policy as it relates to elementary. And so it's 25 at kindergarten and 27 1-5. And it's interesting because it's important that I would tell people to talk to the registrar, because it's people literally get put on waiting lists, even though that they could see a building. That may not be the building they go to, because the growth is exponential. And so 27 students in grades 1 through 5 and 25 at kindergarten. And if we can make it lower, we do.
Another question we have is, when will ground break on the elementary if this bond is passed?
We'll take bids in June, and then we'll begin the excavation or dirt work in August or September. We like to get things done because on days like today, not a lot of construction happens unless you're enclosed. So we'll try to get the necessary work done, and then as soon as we're able to proceed with other phases of construction, we'll do so.
Great. Well, I think we've gotten through all of the submitted questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight, and thank you for your questions. We have information regarding the Elementary 11 bond referendum, how to find your polling location, how to request an absentee ballot, and more on our website, which is www.ankenyschools.org. And I would just remind everyone to be sure to vote February 6, 2018, or to request an absentee ballot before that time. So thank you again for joining us tonight, and we will be sure to post this video online.